Hello, everyone. I'm Rebecca Modrak, a professor in the Stamps School of Art and Design. Tonight, Ayana Evans is with us. She's a New York City-based artist who grew up in Chicago. She teaches at Brown University in Providence, where she received her BA in visual art. Her MFA from Temple University was focused on painting. Ayana Evans is also editor-at-large for cultbytes.com. As a Roman J. Witt visiting artist at the Stamps School of Art and Design this past autumn, Ayana created a new performance work, which my Dressing Up and Down class had the honor of helping her bring to life. We'll show a clip of this work in a moment. You can watch the full video in Ayana's presentation as part of the Penny Stamps lecture series, which is available to view online. The link is in the chat. Working with Ayana was intense and meaningful. She started pushing boundaries at our first meeting when she performed for us from her apartment, her camera taped to the ceiling. Her work challenges, celebrates, and connects us. This evening, Ayana is joined by Reginald Jackson, an associate professor of Japanese literature and performance in LS&A's Asian Languages and Cultures program. He's the director of the Center for Japanese Studies in the International Institute. He earned his PhD in East Asian Studies from Princeton University and has been on the faculty at Yale University and the University of Chicago before coming to the University of Michigan. His research centers on the relationship between politics and aesthetics and often examines performance and gender. We're starting off this evening with a segment from Ayana's Penny Stamps lecture series presentation, where she explains her shift to performance as a form of expression and its relationship to social media. Then we'll watch one of Ayana's videos of a solo performance as an introduction and to set the stage for this evening's discussion. Ayana created this work under the constraints of pandemic conditions in her home rather than at a gallery or in public. And we'll see a short excerpt of the performance Ayana created at the Stamps School, which showcases another mode of her work, Ayana acting as a choreographer or catalyst to set others in motion. Let's take a look at Ayana's work.
So the goal was for me just to be an artist, like a painter. So my MFA is in painting. And I did that for a little bit. I decided to switch and go into fashion. So then I went to FIT. I had a small handbag company for a little while, about 7 years. And it did pretty good. You know, some celebrities wore the stuff. I got into some magazines. I kind of missed art and I had to go back to it, but I didn't want to go back to painting. Painting wasn't what I wanted anymore. And so I had to figure out something else. And in figuring it out, and also trying to figure out the art scene all over again, I ended up discovering performance art. And so I started going to a lot of underground performance art shows, just going to shows. Like I always tell people, my education in performance art is super DIY. Like I went to like 3 shows easy in one night. I would go to probably 4 or 5 within the week. I'd go to Queens, bounce down to Brooklyn, then go to something else in Manhattan. And slowly I started thinking, well, I'll do something. And so I said I was going to do a social experiment. I wanted to wear whatever I wanted because I've been going to art shows that were for painters and stuff. I didn't fit in. I didn't fit in because I looked like a fashion person at an art show. And I was self-conscious about that. So I had a friend that said, you should just say F it and wear whatever you want. And then she recommended that I talk to this girl, Tiffany Rhodes, who designs Butch Diva. And their tagline is spandex and chaos. And I was like, that's for me. So I went and I got my first cat suit from her. Actually, I borrowed it. It was not supposed to be a forever thing. And so 2 of my designer friends came with me with their cell phones and we recorded what happened when I walked through the museum in a neon bodysuit. And I picked the colors like a painter. Like I wanted the green to be against a white background, and I usually wear a red lip, and I was thinking about how will that look? The feathers hadn't come in yet. No feathers, no crowns yet. So we do the video, we put it on YouTube, and it takes a year. I did it and it was like, oh my God, there's a big reaction. About a year later, it goes semi-viral. Viral for art is not viral for like other things. Like if I was a makeup viral, it's 1 million views. For art, it's only like 100,000 views. But it's within a niche little community. So I got invited to shows based on that. By then I'd done like 5 different videos that were on YouTube. And I was slowly posting more and more. So technically I come from YouTube, which I always think is funny. Even though I have the standard background with Skowhegan and the MFA and that sort of thing. So sometimes people don't realize that social media is kind of where my access comes from.
Unified and determined first to make justice a reality for Afro-Americans. The step backward has a new name today. It is called the white backlash. But the white backlash is nothing new. It is the surfacing of old prejudices, hostilities, and ambivalences that have always been there. It was caused neither by the cry of Black Power, nor by the unfortunate recent wave of riots in our cities. The white backlash of today is rooted in the same problem that has characterized America ever since the black man landed in chains on the shores of this nation. This does not imply that all white Americans are racist. Far from it. Many white people have, through a deep moral compulsion, fought long and hard for racial justice. Nor does it mean that America has made no progress in her attempt to cure the body politic of the disease of racism, or that the dogma of racism has not been considerably modified in recent years. However, for the good of America, it is necessary to refute the idea that the dominant ideology in our country, even today, is freedom and equality, while racism is just an occasional departure from the norm on the part of a few bigoted extremists. Racism can well be that corrosive evil that will bring down the curtain on Western civilization. Arnold Toynbee has said that some 26 civilizations
you lose the common truth, and you're better than good to me. Be good to me. Be good. Be good to me. 'Cause I don't have no use, but you lose the common truth, and I don't have the time for your little lies. You're better than good to me. Good to me. Go to me.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for that introduction, and I'd like to welcome you all to this performance and conversation with Ayana Evans. Hi, Ayana. Great to see you. I think you might be muted. Sorry. Yeah. Great. Thank you so much. So much to talk about this evening. I'm so grateful for everyone for coming tonight as we engage in this discussion, hopefully wide-ranging, I'm sure, as befits Ayana's arts practice. And I want to just start with this, this last clip that we saw. There's so much to talk about since you're trying out so many different things and making so much important work. But I'm curious in particular about that final segment with the bodysuits and the mics and the dancing, punctuated by the collective fall at the end. It seems celebratory, but with the abrupt stop, it also has a kind of an ominous element too. So I was kind of wondering if you could talk a bit about how making spaces to feature joy and interrupting that joy matter in your work.
Yeah, sure. So I guess I should say that they had on, I don't know if that was obvious from the clip, but they had on these like elaborate costumes that they kind of strip away.
Mm-hmm.
And so I like the idea that like there's a stripping away that happens.
Mm-hmm.
But yet that's like, there's a freedom in that, right? You kind of strip down to like just kind of your bare element. Like we really see your shape. We really know like where your curves are. We know how your body moves, all of that. So that's there with the bodysuits. But then also like falling down is supposed to be like a collapse in terms of like you're exhausted, but also like, I just want to lay out, like a bit of a slumber party vibe. There's also like, you're not supposed to lay down on a football field. I like that you kind of broke a little rule. And then there's a reference to like the police violence that's been happening in America, like the genocide that has happened to America, like to indigenous people, to Black people, like kind of our thing, right? So there's a reference to that, like the laying out is also like a dead body just laying there, right? But I want it to be like, there's joy in that before that. And then in the video, they get back up and they lay back down again. So there's this idea that like, yeah, all these things happen, they're horrible, but like there's joy within like the Black community. I wanted to make sure that was highlighted somehow, like that joy of just keep going. You don't keep going in this begrudging, I hate my life kind of way. You keep going, like the joy kind of pushes you forward, but it does get interrupted. So I don't want there to be like this, like, oh, we're happy and that's it. You know, like, nah, that's not it.
Indeed. So it's helpful to think a little bit then, I mean, partially because I'm thinking about themes in your work, and hopefully many of the people that came here tonight were able to see some of the press around your work and think about this, but I think about some of the stopping traffic and these kind of different theme of interruption comes up, I think, in several of your pieces in interesting ways, alongside, in a great way, I think, in terms of juxtaposing it, exactly what you're talking about. On the one hand, highlighting the resilience, but then also calling attention to, let's say, state-sanctioned violence and so forth in the midst of that, I think is really helpful. So along these lines, and maybe it'd be helpful to hear a bit more about, insofar as how you do a lot of work that's collaborative and you do a lot of participatory art making. You say at one point in an interview, I believe interaction breaks down barriers and allows us all to be closer, which I think is some ways is related to the title of the event tonight. Would you mind talking a little bit about how you direct or choreograph such a piece, or your philosophy towards different participant audiences, and how your attitude towards these audiences change, for instance? And here I'm thinking about something like It's Pulling at Me, which seems to be more adversarial, say, versus when folks are pulling at your hair and everything, versus something like Katsu Gardening and Untitled, which seem much more cooperative and seem to be where folks seem to be more empathetic.
I think that the empathetic is probably what I enjoy most, but there is a part of me that wants to express like this. Violence is almost too strong. I guess microaggression is more like what I'm trying to show in my performances. Like this way that these little things are eating at you. And specifically with It's Pulling at Me, I was like in a space where it was a good space, and that like a lot of people were calling me for things. But it was also the first time that it happened in my career. And there's no money for an assistant. And you're working 3 jobs. And you're saying yes to everything because you're scared things will go away. And you're dealing with racism in a way that like you're walking on eggshells with it. And so it's pulling at me was like all those things. And it felt like that, like I'm being pulled in a million directions and this is pulling at me. And I think at the time I was getting a lot of questions about like, oh, are you trying to just be, how did they put it? Are you just trying to get noticed? You just want people to look at you. You just want attention, which I think is like this weird dismissive thing that people say a lot to women, but I don't hear that when it comes to like a male or masculine viewed body. Like as wild as they are, the critique is usually not, you're just trying to get attention. Like you could be trying to destroy the world and that's how they'll say it. They will not say you're just trying to get attention. But with women, like if we wear like bright colors or a bright red lip, oh, you just want attention. I might just like a red lip. So all of that was going on with the pulling at me. So it kind of has a little more of the, adversarial. It's like, this mess is pulling at me and I'm still trying to kick the wall with my heels. So there's that. And that element is in some of the works. And then there's an element of like, I want you to work with me. Like, it sounds cheesy when I say it, but there's a bit of like, I want the world better. And if you want the world better, you have to cooperate. And there has to be like this symbiotic, and it has to be a break of hierarchies. Like I'm always kind of thinking about that. Like if I'm better than you for whatever reason, it doesn't work. And then also if I'm the artist that you can't touch or the artist that you can't like interact with on the same plane, then it doesn't work either. And I don't like it within art spaces when it's like, okay, this is the director, here's the professor, here's the this, here's the that, here's the student that no one knows. And these people are famous, they're clique and they came to see me, they know each other, but they're not gonna talk to the student. But if you can set up a situation where they have to talk, I feel like that's ideal.
Yeah. I think that's really useful to kind of hear, partially because it suggests that there's something about performance, maybe more broadly, but certainly the way that you're doing it, that then opens up these kinds of spaces or forces people to kind of act. I think interact in this kind of opens a space for this potentially collaborative type of world making or something that depends in some ways, right, on that kind of spectacle that you're talking about. I mean, the point is taken, particularly in terms of recent events at the Capitol and, putting one's feet up on a desk or dressing like a Viking yak or whatever, right? Where that type of attention seeking, that's in service of a certain kind of white supremacist ideology is normalized, right? And so I think it's really helpful to think alongside those kinds of horrible things, what is it exactly that's going on when people are inclined to police, your kind of body politics, right? Because it makes them in some ways maybe think about, that dispossession towards policing, I think needs to be critiqued. And some of the stuff that you're doing, I think really interrupts that in a really helpful way, in fact. Yeah. Well, I mean, on that point, then maybe kind of moving forward, I think that in the video you talked too about just kind of your evolution. You said, you talked about YouTube making you and maybe the evolution of your artistic practice. I think it's been really interesting. So could you talk a little bit about your turn to performance and particularly what it affords you in relation to something like painting or fashion? I mean, I understand that there's a kind of as your outfit would suggest, and I'm trying to be simpatico with I don't have my cat suits in the cleaners, but I wore stripes in honor of this. But could you talk a little bit about what performance gives you that painting, wasn't giving to you? I mean, besides that hierarchy, which seems really important to what you're talking about, like at the formal level, the technical level, potentially.
Yeah. Well, with painting, I did try to go back to painting at some point. I don't know if I said that in the interview, but I did try to go back. After a long break in fashion, I tried to go back and be a painter again. And I made really ugly things that I hated. I just couldn't do it. Like I was trying to force it, But the thing with painting is that if I make an aggressive painting, I don't care, how abstractly, I could literally put a manifesto on the canvas, whatever. It can be huge, it can be bright, it can be, so big that you can't ignore it in the room. At the end of the day, you can walk away from it.
Nice.
And I think there's something there that doesn't satisfy me. Like you can walk away from that painting and just You could be in the room with it, turn your back, and you're done with it. Whereas if you came to my performance,
Yeah.
good luck. I'm going to, I've thrown chairs in performances at people who were not paying attention to me.
Oh,
And so I feel like it's a different confrontation. You have to deal with my body in a very direct way. You have to deal with what I'm saying. Even if you think it's crazy, you have to sit there and process. I think she's crazy. You have to deal with that. Painting, it doesn't give you that. Painting is, you know, it's a little safer, can be on your couch. You know what I mean? Like, and also there's a commodification that, quite frankly, because I was so broke, I was kind of angry about. Like,
Sure.
Like, why am I trying to sell this thing for $5,000, $10,000? And then there's some people who I really want to see it. They'll never see it. They can never own it. And there's something really satisfying with performance where it's like, everyone can see it and everyone can experience it and everyone can have it and no one can really own it. And there's something about that I really love. And I know galleries hate that crap. They're like, how do we monetize your work?
How do you? Yeah.
But
Well,
it's outside of that system. So it's on them. Like, okay, you take a picture, you sell the picture. That's how you monetize it. But what I'm doing is for the people in the room. So I like that a lot. I hope that answered it.
No, and I mean, more than answered it, it actually opened up a whole nother set of things, which is really great, which I think gets to, you know, kind of the politics. I mean, I'm glad that you mentioned the economy of being a broke artist on the one hand, and how that intersects or aligns with these other kinds of concerns of galleries and institutions that, you know, it's you as an artist, but it's also you and the body you inhabit as a Black woman as well. And there's longer histories, I think, that you're kind of confronting in some ways in some of the work around commodification, objectification, what it means to expropriate value from Black bodies in particular, right? You know, so it's not just about throwing a chair because somebody's not paying attention. It's about using this kind of performance venue as a space in which, right, people have to engage you, and, you know, and that immediacy, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like that's there, that's amplified in that space, that seems really attractive to you, but it's also, there's a politics to that. What other spaces are there? You know what I mean? For certain folks and certain bodies, you know, from certain backgrounds, to be able to command that attention and actually command it, as opposed to just be subject to it or just be kind of right.
There aren't many spaces. And I should say, if you're labeled a performance artist, it's freeing. If I show up and I'm grumpy, no one's like, why is she acting grumpy? Like, if I was a painter, they would expect me to kind of pull it together, cover up that I'm grumpy. But I've noticed as a performance artist, if anything, people are on cue for you to do something that's not the norm. So when you do, it's like forgiven, which is nice. It's a real freedom in that. And then, because even in fashion, you could be weird. You can be outside the norm, but you still got to sell something at the end of the day.
Right.
So it's a different negotiation. You can be weird to a point, or weird to the point of entertainment. Once you're not entertaining, you probably gonna lose your job. But with performance, it doesn't have to be entertaining. It might be horrible, and I put you through torture, and I can say that's the peeve. I can justify it. Which makes my labor different. It's a different.
No, I think that's really helpful. I mean, and to maybe kind of pivot from that last point about how that labor is read, or how it's accepted or not, and to think about, you know, in great ways. I mean, one of the things I found really compelling, kind of getting to know your work more for this event, is how you really foreground labor and kind of put your body in display as a laboring body. And you talk about this too, I think, in the New York Times piece that featured you, like what it means to outwork folks and to show them that you're willing to do this work, and kind of what that means in this space. As opposed to, I mean, you talked about it already in some ways, about like having that labor dismissed.
Right.
And I'm thinking that's related partially to the pandemic, and how all this kind of labor, whether it's women's labor, domestic labor, that used to be so kind of routinized and invisible, is now painfully obvious to more and more folks. And you know what that does in terms of you know, the optics of that labor also potentially being kind of opening up space to have conversations, and to you know, not kid ourselves about these kind of exploitative practices, right?
Right. Like to put it out there, where you have to kind of grapple with, like, okay, if these teachers do a lot more work than people thought. All of a sudden,
Absolutely.
pandemic happened.
Yeah.
And I had friends who were like, "Oh my God, teachers are amazing," and I'm like, "It's been amazing."
They've been amazing, right? Like pay
You have
us.
been it.
Right. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. No.
But now
sure.
that they were teaching at home, it's like a new appreciation,
Yeah.
which
for
is
instance.
interesting to see that like open up because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
And then as far as like
Mm.
like labor just of women or labor of Black bodies,
Mhm.
I think that even that was looked at different because all of a sudden there's essential workers, which was not a term before.
Mhm.
You know, like it was like, okay, that's my janitor.
Mhm. Mhm.
That's a guy, that's the Amazon guy. He
Mhm.
used to say that. Now all of a sudden he's an essential worker.
Mhm.
That sounds so much more dignified,
Yeah.
so much more thankful for
Mhm.
him coming to his job, right?
Yeah.
So it's
Absolutely.
interesting to watch that happen. And I've
Mhm.
been thinking a lot about how, like, in my family personally, I'm the
Mm.
first generation that doesn't do any type of like manual labor.
Mhm.
My grandmother worked as a maid. One of them worked as a maid. The other was a cook for white people in Mississippi.
Mhm.
My father does have a PhD, but to get through college,
Mhm.
he had to work as a butler
Mhm.
for this. I don't know if they were wealthy, middle class family
Sure.
in Mississippi. And when he went to get he went up north to get his master's degree.
Mhm.
You know, the idea being, I will now go into my professional job.
Mhm.
Thank you. They were like, "Oh, you've been great. And when you finish, you'll have a job here. You can always come back." That's how
Mhm.
racist these people were. So he
Yeah.
had to do those type of jobs,
Mhm.
right? And my mother actually picked cotton as a kid.
Mhm.
Like, she always makes light of it, which I think is funny. She's like, "Oh, just a little chore. They didn't expect me to do much." And I'm like,
Right.
"Do you hear yourself?" You know?
Right.
Like, okay, you weren't sharecropping,
Right. Right. On the one hand, right.
but
Yeah.
you picked cotton. Like, you have that memory in your head. I don't have memories like that. So to me, some of the labor, when I'm doing it, I'm thinking about that, like
Mhm.
what my
Mhm.
family history is, what my personal history is, and
Yeah.
how like I have like a luxury of choosing it and not choosing it.
Mhm.
But at the same time, and I'm sure you know this, with academia
Mm.
and with the arts, you're
Of
still
course.
doing a certain type of labor.
Mhm.
It looks different,
Yeah.
but it can wear on you, and people do die from it. People run
Yeah.
themselves literally into the ground,
Yeah.
and next thing you know, that person has cancer. They had a heart attack.
Yeah.
You know, you see people, they look great one year, and the next year they look horrible. But
Right.
they just had a book come out. But you know, they left themselves to the ground.
Right. Sure.
So
Well, I
all
think.
of that's
Yeah.
there.
No, absolutely, and that's really helpful to. I mean, I really appreciate how you're highlighting that kind of longer kind of genealogy and how it that those different let's say that trope of working kind of as part of like who your parents are and how that relates to you, and again what performance does to make us pay attention to those labors differently and kind of what it affords
Mhm.
as a different kind of space to work or even to kind of criticize kind
Yeah.
of these kinds of regimes where people are kind of run down. I mean, I think that's one of the things that's built in. You talked a little bit about your the way that you love William Pope Bell,
Yes.
and some of that. And I was thinking a little bit about those performances. I mean, particularly, around this question of exertion, around the risk that you, at least in the past, maybe in the future, it's like in pandemic territory, I'm happy to dial it back or whatever. But can you talk a little bit about this, what it means to kind of stage risk in that way in some of your work, or how your thoughts about that have changed maybe?
I kind of think staging risk is like really fun.
Okay. So
For
just like
me
the pleasure then.
personally,
Yeah.
I get pleasure out of it. I do.
Mm-hmm.
I feel strong when I do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I personally like watching it. So that's where Pope Bell for me is like,
Mm-hmm.
my God, like when he does those crawl pieces,
The crawls, yeah.
oh my God, it's like what? Or some of the lesser known things, like there's a piece where I believe he ties sausage, like the links,
Mm-hmm.
sausage links tied around his stomach.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he attached himself to the bank. It's like an ATM area at like, it's a busy area. What is it? Grand Central.
Mm-hmm.
And he has on Timbs, no pants, some underwear, and some it looks like a skirt, but it's like made out of money. I hope I'm envisioning it right. Anyway, so the idea being that he was giving away money.
Mm-hmm.
ATM with these sausages.
Mm-hmm.
Greasy sausages. Something about that raw, they're not cooked.
Right. Yeah.
Something about that I was like, that's brilliant. But do you know they tried to arrest him for that? All he really was doing was giving away money.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, there's commentary in that,
Of course.
but nothing was happening, you know?
Yeah.
And yet
Wasn't
it's
hurting
not to
anyone.
arrest him.
Yeah.
So I think there's something really interesting where you can challenge what people see as danger.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then I love the boldness of his work. I do.
Yeah.
I think where me and him are very different though is I've noticed with Pope when he gives an interview, I don't think he cares if you really understand what he's talking about.
0%.
Which I kind of
Bless
find
his heart.
delightful.
0%.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
That's part of what he's leaving you. You deal with that. That's
Yeah,
not
exactly.
my job, and I'm not doing it.
Right. Yeah.
I do like to try to explain because I think it helps people come with me.
Mm-hmm.
But I there's a part of him that even that is more transgressive than me because he's like, I'm not explaining to you.
Yeah.
You come with me or you don't. You deal with this abstract action or you don't.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And if you don't, you missed it.
Yeah.
And now that he's so well known, when you don't come with him on it, now you feel confused and left out, which I think is brilliance to that too, right? Because now it's like, well, how's this guy who's getting shows at MoMA and the Whitney at the same time? He had shows recently at the same time. And I'm like, who does that?
Yeah.
He had a public display crawl with I don't know how many people.
Well, it's a couple thousand, wasn't it? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then he had the show with the Whitney. And then he had another thing at MoMA that was more of a retrospective, all at the same time. And some people don't realize museums sometimes don't want you to do all at the same time because they want to be the only ones to hold you.
Having exclusive, yeah, sure.
Right. He did the opposite of exclusivity. Everybody just had to deal with it.
Which is kind of an FU to the museums, right? I mean, that's I mean, like there's no, I mean, I haven't spoken to him about this, but but yeah, yeah.
While you have your paid exhibit.
Right, exactly.
It is.
I think, no, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, along those lines, and maybe we can talk a little bit, just kind of changing to think about, and it's helpful to hear, you know, what you like. I mean, the pleasure about the performance. I mean, that's certainly there, I think, and whether that's the dancing and the Diana Ross mahogany, you know, kind of in that mode, the exuberance, which is great, but then also. It is interesting, though, to think about kind of the danger, not just as something that adds value to the performance or your experience of it, but then also over the long haul. I mean, I think, and this is where I was interested. I was just talking about Pope El Day in another talk. He has this notion of showing up to withhold. So on the one hand, you show up and you're kind of really spectacular, but you're not giving, you're always kind of keeping something in reserve. And so I was thinking about that in relation to some of your work. Because you mentioned that you have an interest in Butoh, or this kind of avant-garde Japanese dance, which, as it happens, is really interesting to me as someone who works on Japanese stuff. So I was wondering, could you talk about? I mean, I think if we move away from kind of the risk and the danger of the performance, but this emphasis on slowness. Or on kind of not dialing back in terms of, let's say, the performance aesthetic necessarily, but slowing things down and what's attractive about that maybe now in a way that maybe wasn't in some of your earlier work.
So I have to admit, I was real geeked that they put me with you to talk because of this.
Oh, that's great.
I was like, he's gonna get the Butoh thing, and he's not gonna be like, let's not talk about it.
Oh no, absolutely. Let's absolutely.
I feel like I bring it up, and people are.
I dress for the occasion. Absolutely, please.
Yeah, they're like, I don't want to talk about. Like, we didn't bring you here to talk about
Butoh. Well,
you know what I mean. Like, you
which we should bracket too, right? Like, why are you not expected to talk about Japanese performance, and what does that say about other people's prejudices or expectations for your how to kind of categorize you, right? Yeah.
Exactly. It's like you're supposed to be in this like little space. And when you step out of it, they're like, wait, what? That's not what we brought you here for. And I'm like, well, I read, you know, like I'm in the world. I'm not just like checking the box, feminist, Black.
Right.
And okay, sometimes people are into you're from the Midwest.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're super into you come from slaves.
Yeah, sure.
That's it. Like sometimes those are your boxes. You're hitting them hard. And I do hit those boxes, but then it's like I do like international culture. Like what? So with Butoh, first of all, I can't do it.
Okay.
And there's something about what I can't do physically that I'm always interested in. Always find that really like, but with performance, I've always thought that there's moments where you have to slow down or do nothing. so that idea of withholding, there's like the literal withholding of like, I might be angry and I'm releasing a lot, but there's something I'm not telling you.
Mhm.
There's an inside joke that's
Sure.
always in my work.
Mhm.
But then there's also like, with Butoh, there's a feeling you get as you
Mhm.
watch that slowness unfold.
Mhm.
That speed can never give, yelling can never give,
Right.
harshness. It's like a beauty of subtlety, right?
Yeah, and the understatement is, is really intense that way. Yeah.
Exactly.
Mhm.
And so I like thinking about arts like that, because there's something, if you could put a touch of that in between the chaos and the resistance that you're showing in a performance like mine.
Mhm.
Like when I'm in the middle of the street, I'm really calm.
Yeah.
But that adds to the work.
Yeah.
If it was chaotic and you're in the street, it almost would be too overwhelming.
It doesn't work. It's too much. Yeah. Yeah.
But
Mhm.
if you're just kind of calm, like I slowly do chair dips, slowly do push-ups. I don't yell. My
Mhm.
face is always relaxed. If
Mhm.
there's something to that adds to the work and allows people to feel your emotions in a very different way.
Mhm.
And they
Mhm.
also feel their own emotions in a different way, because
Mhm.
you've
Mhm.
slowed down enough for them to enter.
Mhm.
To me, that's a very abstract thing that's so Butoh. Like
Mhm.
the performer slowed down for
Mhm.
you to enter and
Mhm.
you to bring your pace,
Mhm.
your thoughts.
Mhm.
It opens up this other thing.
Mhm. Mhm.
I think that has to be there at the same time.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about time a lot in the work. And when I first started, I used to speed up too much.
Mhm. Mhm.
But then in the pandemic,
Mhm.
I had to perform for the camera more.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that meant thinking about time even more than
Mhm.
before. It was more like worrying about in-person interactions, and then also just my own personal
Yeah.
desire to have this abstraction or to have the
Mhm.
speeds interchange, and that makes it more interesting.
Mhm.
But with the pandemic, I was like, literally my life is slow.
Yeah.
And then how can I make it work on camera so that it's not too
Mhm.
fast? Because if it's too overwhelming on camera, you just turn it off.
Yeah.
And if it's too slow,
Mhm.
you might not turn it off, but you walk
Mhm.
away.
Right. Sure.
You turn your screen off, you're like, I'm not
Yes.
there, but
Yeah. So to calibrate the speed,
uh-huh,
in relation to the new kind of constraints of the pandemic is really interesting.
exactly,
Yeah. Yeah.
exactly.
Huh, huh, huh. I mean,
So
please. Yeah.
no, go.
No, yeah. So no, that's really helpful. I mean, I teach on Butoh, but I really my specialty is on no drama, which is slower
Yeah,
and
I was gonna say,
more deliberate. Like, so Butoh folks are looking at no folks,
like y'all heard me.
and Butoh folks look like exactly like kind of speed demons. But it's really interesting to hear you talk about that. I mean, partially as the hinge from something like Popel's work. I mean, because part of the, let's say, the kind of embodied critique that he's making, by crawling in a Superman, say, suit or something, is about this. I think that piece is the Great White Way, right? The
Yep,
Superman crawl,
yep.
and thinking about aspiration and what it means to kind of, make that really painful kind of deliberate labor so visible. I mean, I think it goes back to what you're saying about things like essential workers, like these folks that are toiling all the time on our behalf. Who aren't recognized, and where the labor that's most spectacular is like, stopping a bullet or a train, on a Marvel movie or a DC movie or something. So that slowness is interesting, partially because in Butoh, at least, maybe you already know this, so forgive me if you do, but it came out of this really fraught political moment in the post-war period in Japan, where folks were in really productive but maybe unhealthy ways looking to this notion of like Japanese soil and the earth, partially because they hated the US.
Yep.
And all of that imperialism that's still very much in play in the context of Japan being a kind of client state in many ways, the US still, that and so these folks who were kind of tired of that were really looking to this whereas Hollywood, US kind of militarism, et cetera, was all about speed.
Yep.
Speed, production, this kind of capitalist and of wet dream, that the Butoh thing was in its best moments was really about using one's body to kind of opt out of that.
Yeah. I'm not
and
doing
so
that.
I'm not going to do that, right? Exactly. And to and to be alienating in this way that really did force people to you know, to deal with, whether that's a strangled chicken on stage or these kind of really kind of intense expressions that don't try to represent or give you very much when everything is being kind of force fed or spoon fed, you know. And so it's really interesting to think about how you respond, or kind of that resonates with you from a completely different kind of cultural tradition. But I think I would say that some of the political underpinnings are quite similar, in fact, you know.
You know, I never thought of it that way, actually. I really hadn't.
Yeah.
You're right. It is like a similar pull,
Yeah.
especially with the whole year. We're kind of rejecting some of the same things I want to reject.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I definitely believe there has to be these moments where you kind of just don't. And I think my performances got better the more I was aware of that, the more I would add those moments where.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Yeah.
When you say better, you mean like more satisfying for you or the audience, or like you?
I think both.
Mhm.
But definitely more satisfying for me, because I didn't feel like, usually when the breaks happen are definitely when I want them to.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Like even in that intro video, just putting feathers on your face and laying there for a little bit, it's very calming. It's not it's just like, I'm just gonna do that for a second, you know? And it's funny, they cut off the dangerous part of that, which is the next part, where I eat the orange. I put orange peels on my eyes, which feels also super soothing. And I think I put them up my nose too. That's super soothing. People think it's not, but like citrus, it just gives a soothing. It's like a mask for your inner nostril.
So it's like low-key spa.
Sick, yeah, low-key spa for real. If you ever get sick, put some little nostril up your nose. But then I pull out a knife and I just hold it, and it looks far more dangerous than it is. You know, I'm not drunk or something. I'm not gonna look, but it scares people. And I put my face closed, and you have to deal with the fact that I'm holding this knife. And you might have thought it was all fun and games up until then, and I'm playing on my bed. But the second I pull out the knife, and it's funny because on Instagram the comments disappear, but in the original comments, people are like, "The knife's back! Oh, the knife! Oh no!" Like it freaks people out. But like I like that moment where it's like I just have feathers like just laying out there on my face. It's nice, but then here's the knife. So I need that push pull.
Nice. So we're almost, I want to ask maybe one more question, then we'll turn it over, I think, to kind of take some of the questions from the audience and some pre-submitted questions. But maybe with that in mind, since we've mentioned the knife and also, you know, this interesting juxtaposition again between, let's say, at least the symbol of violence and this, you know, self-care that you're staging. I mean, I think particularly about these performances where you have the camera on the ceiling, which is really fascinating, partially because it completely reorients how we're able to even think about like your body is at risk or working, right? I mean, it seems like you're having, you know, there's pleasure involved, right, on the one hand, but it's not the same as, you know, doing push-ups in the street or, you know, or these other things, right? And so I think along those lines, it does kind of bring up for me the question of, you know, I think kind of how your work really forces us to pay attention to how, say, marginalized or non-normative bodies take up space, you know, publicly, but I think particularly in this pandemic context, which is really precarious, especially. So could you talk a little bit? I realize that there's lots of boxes that you check and Butoh is a thing, you know, but I think it's also, but could you talk a little bit about how your relationship to space has changed? And particularly how you think about the politics of Black women's bodies occupying space in this particular historical moment? Because I think that leisure that you're performing, you know, seems really resonant, you know, at this moment where it's so hard in some ways to take care of ourselves and so forth. So
I think that some of that is like what I'm hearing also like on social media, or what I'm personally caring about, like this idea of like extreme self-care, or the idea of radical rest, which I've seen a lot of artists take on right now. So there's a bit of that in terms of like how you take up space. But then also I like the idea of taking space up in a big way. So if I like the colors to be bright for that reason, or the performance to be striking in that reason, or the music to be loud for that reason. I think in this time though, especially with like Stacey Abrams and people like that having like a center stage, which never happened before. People don't
Bush, yeah.
they don't talk about that, but like there were a lot of women involved in the civil rights movement in the 60s who you never heard their name. And now you're getting like that same level of grassroots action, but you know the person's name and you can see their faces. Like people didn't just show Stacey, they showed the crew who were her top, organizers, all Black women. So it's interesting to see, not even interesting, it's delightful to see that we're being allowed, and I'm saying allowed because it's still within this construct, right? Within a lot of patriarchy, a lot of racism. We're being allowed to be seen more than ever. And some of why we're being allowed is guilt, which I saw definitely. I'm sure you did too. Did you get calls? I used to get calls like, I'm so sorry about all racism. I'm like, well, it's been here. You should have been sorry. But
and I have a lecture series to plan, so please, if you could.
Exactly, and I'm busy, and I'm napping, and I need to do a facial, and I can't really take on your guilt right now because you want to give me 100 years worth of guilt, and I'm busy.
It's inopportune, yeah. No, I think that's really helpful to kind of think about, and to, I mean, it also helps us to kind of draw this longer trajectory or kind of genealogy between different ways of taking up space in public and what that means. I mean, there's interesting work in performance studies about, what it means to choreograph, like the civil rights, like these sit-ins and so forth, like, just how deliberate these were, and the discipline. I mean, it's a different kind of discipline than what you're talking about, but there's a way to think about that, like what it means to stage these kinds of actions with one's body and kind of to produce these social effects, not just paying attention, but also towards some kind of broader kind of change in perspectives.
The shift.
Absolutely. Hopefully towards more acceptance, I think to get to the title, to drop the title keyword in here.
Exactly that idea.
Yeah.
I do think we're opening. It's a long way to go, but like art is getting more accepting of everyone. But it's one of those things where it's like taking up space alone doesn't satisfy it. You know what I mean? Because like you could be put in the show, but it's easy for it to be just like a few people and still,
of course, kind of tokenism or something. Yeah.
And it's not like this expansive. So
yeah. And that seems like another vote in favor of performance as opposed to the kind of gallery route in some ways, right? Like, if you're trying to resist that kind of, if it's tokenism or a kind of, myopia, yeah. Well, that in mind, I mean, so there's several questions that people are, I think some people are putting in questions now too, but I have there's some pre-submitted questions that came from participants as well. So maybe we can kind of open the floor. So a couple of these are related to just exactly what we're talking about now. And so one of the questions we have here is along these lines, so how can we as lay artists, as well as renowned artists, use our art to be change makers in order to elevate diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility, democracy, social justice? So are there certain kind of touchstones or principles or techniques even that you think, in addition to what you've already,
I think this might sound bad because I make art, but I think the biggest changes are made actually outside of art, if I'm honest. Within the space that you're in. So I love art. So no matter what, the world could get fixed and I'm still gonna be making art. But I think when you're in those spaces, you have to be helpful to other people and consciously bring more people in who look like you, who have your same values, who are gonna be good people within the space. You kind of want to flood the space. This is my personal strategy.
Yeah, you don't want trash folks in the space. Yeah,
exactly. So if I'm invited to do something, even for this Michigan project, I'm calling my homeboy who always does video for me, like as cheaply as possible because I don't have budget. But now I got budget. Like Michigan call, I want you to do it, and this money is gonna fund some of your projects. Right. So it's like you have to figure out how to make that happen. And then also just in really small ways. Like if you get a grant, you should be giving your application for that grant to at least one other person that you want to see get that grant. you already came through the door.
Mhm.
So now you hold it open.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times people don't do that. And then they wonder why am I the only one here? But you didn't
Right,
hold the door
because
open.
right, because they're outside in the cold knocking, but
Exactly,
yeah.
knocking, watching you grab your award. You know, it's little ways. If you get an award, your date should be someone else who is in the field who does
Mhm.
not have the same access as you.
Mhm.
Period.
Mhm.
Like it should not just be like, I want to date this cute. No,
Mhm.
you bring your homie that wants to meet that person, and
Sure.
then you talk about
Get
them,
access, yeah.
and you both show up dressed very
Mm-hmm.
interesting, so everyone wants to flock to you. We
Mhm.
know how to do this.
Yeah.
Like people who don't have means know how to do that.
Yeah, and work it out. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think sometimes we don't, and we try to just make a poster or make a painting that talks about it, but then the actual action
Mhm.
that could make that more tangible in the real world, we don't do. So I
Mhm.
think the biggest thing is to do it in your own like life in those ways.
Yeah, yeah. Absolutely. That's super helpful. Thank you. I mean, so that relates to other questions we have about, I think that kind of advice to, so you actually killed two birds with one stone just now. So thank you. There's another question about, advice to artists and, people, particularly in these kind of difficult circumstances. But, part of what you're saying is lift as you climb, right?
Yeah.
Which is really important.
Yeah.
And, and presumably that can still happen in this pandemic context. I mean, I think that there's, so some other questions. One is, which work of yours has been most impactful to you?
To me. Ooh.
Yeah. Which is not the same as like which is your favorite, but
I know,
which has
like
been
what's
most
impactful.
Yeah.
I think I just came here to find a husband is the most impactful.
Yeah.
Because I literally for 2 years had that sign on my back.
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm free. I don't have to worry about people. Like if I go on a date, I have a boyfriend now. Let me just be honest about that. A boyfriend now.
Okay.
But like when I met him, I was very open, honest, not scared about, you might think I'm desperate, or you might think like, here's this 40-some-year-old woman who wants to have babies and try to make me a husband. Well, I told everybody that. So now, so now
that we've gotten that out of the way,
that's done. We don't have to worry about that.
That's all right.
Like if you see my Instagram, you know that that's what it is. So that freed me up. It taught me a lot of lessons because I was so paranoid and worried about how I looked in that arena. As bold as I am in all these other ways, in my love life, I was embarrassed. And I was like, okay, I had to kind of confront that and answer questions about it in interviews because I put it in the works. So now it's fair game. And then I had to like just come to terms with like, okay, you might be alone. That's okay. Like it's kind of like my biggest fear was on my back all the time. But it was nice to let that go.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's great that performance then became a venue for being able to, liberate yourself from that anxiety, that fear too. Which seems in some ways counterintuitive,
right?
Or at least
right.
but in fact, yeah.
Yeah, it worked. It worked. I did not think that would happen either.
Yeah.
I just thought I would embarrass myself, but I was kind of at a F it moment. So.
Yeah. So there's a few more, if you wouldn't mind, Iana. So one person asked from the open chat, what do you find to be your biggest inspiration to continue creating? And is there a particular space or studio that you prefer to create in?
Biggest. Okay, I can answer the second half easily.
Okay.
No, there's no space that I prefer to create in.
Oh, that's great.
Unless you just count outside. Like I like to just do stuff outside. That's it. I don't even believe in studios. That's my little hack for being an artist in New York. Don't buy a studio. Don't get a studio. You make your work at home, make your work in the street. That's it. In the hallway of your apartment. It might annoy people, but if you give somebody something free, they'll let you do anything. So I don't believe in studios unless you're rich or it's free. That's that. But as far now, what was the first half?
Oh, sure, absolutely. So the first, what do you find to be your biggest inspiration to continue creating?
Biggest inspiration. Okay, one is not healthy. It's fear of failure. And so that I say is not healthy because it makes me work in a way. Like some people joke and they're like, "You're the hardest working woman in performance." I will take on everything. And then I literally do performances where I do jumping jacks for 3 hours in heels because I'm like, let's do this. But there's a fear of failure that's pushing me a little bit. Like, if I don't do all of this, will I fail? And by failure, I'm including wanting the accolades within my field. I want those things. I'd be lying if I didn't say I did. As much as I'm against like patriarchy and capitalism, there's a part of me that does want a house on the vineyard, you know? And how am I going to get that if I sit down? So there's a bit that's unhealthy, that's there. But then also I keep going also because I think about like my family members. People sacrifice a lot for me to be able to be an artist. Like, it's a luxury, it's a privilege. Like, my grandfather wanted to be an artist.
Really?
And he ended up painting the trim at hotels, like the really fancy, they don't really have that anymore, but that really fancy ornate trim. He used to paint that at hotels in Birmingham. And then when he moved up to Cleveland, he started a furniture company, so he still kind of was using that side of himself, but it's
not the way he envisioned or really wanted.
Yeah, and he could not just be a painter. He had the skill for it, but he could not just be. And I do think he loved furniture, so don't get me wrong. Maybe he would have been a painter / sculptor, but that wasn't even open. He couldn't go to high school. You know what I mean? Like, he couldn't go to high school, and I went to an Ivy League school. There's a big gap there. And if I don't do what I came here to do, I'm not doing him justice. He died of a heart attack, you know, before I was even born. That's labor. And so I like to feel like there's some happiness in the universe because I'm doing what I do.
Absolutely.
Like, I do that. There's that part too. There's like, and then there's also just, it's in me. So I usually, even if for a day I'm like, why make art? The next day I'm like, I gotta make art.
Yeah.
Like, those three things all at once.
No, I mean, thank you for sharing that. I mean, I think that's really profound and powerful, right? That this notion of a kind of legacy that you're, you know, trying to, I mean, it's not inspiration as, I mean, so you read and then there's that kind of thing and you're looking at art and everything else, but it's also this kind of long-standing sense of, you know, justice or honoring ancestors that kind of keeps you going too. And I think that's really powerful. It's really moving, in fact. I think we're just about at time, but there's a question maybe related to this, since you mentioned the migration of your ancestors. So where were you raised in Chicago, and how did the segregation in Chicago influence your experience as a Black woman?
Oh, you're from Chicago. Get out of here.
Yeah.
Okay, so Chicago people do this. I went to Kenwood. People in Chicago will ask where you went to high school.
That's true. I was at Whitney Young for a semester, but
you look like a Whitney Young boy. Shut up.
I do
look like Whitney Young.
I hated it though, and I didn't like it at all. Okay. The only redeeming quality was Michelle Obama. In retrospect, yeah. But we'll talk more. But anyway, segregation and your experience as a Black woman artist, and then we'll end there maybe. Yeah.
Okay. So segregation. Wait, what am I saying? How did segregation influence Chicago? Influence me? Is that what I'm answering?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay, let me see it. You just be ignorant and read real quick.
Yeah. So how did the segregation in Chicago influence your experience as a Black woman and work as an artist?
Okay, so I have
if that's the case, if that's
I have feelings about this. So people always talk about segregation like it's this horrible thing.
Yeah.
With the exception of like Malcolm X, right? So I really think being in a segregated Chicago helped me, because I was at a Black high school. I was in a Black neighborhood because I was on the South Side, you know, from 73rd over East by Jeffrey.
Jeffrey 6. Yeah.
I was at a black church, you know, like it was so Black that I had a bit of a buffer from racism or people telling me your nose isn't right, or, you know, you shouldn't wear your hair like that. Or I had a buffer. Like some things that I thought were amazing when I got to college, I was told were ghetto. And I was like, oh, these were just fabulous things to us. And suddenly they were ghetto. And so in a lot of ways, and we learned a lot of Black history, like in my household, at my school, through my church. Like there was just a lot of Black history
Mhm.
and a lot of pride in that.
Mhm.
And so in a lot of ways, I think it helped me. I don't
Mhm.
think it hurt me. It's funny because people always talk about segregation. So it's this terrible thing. We just crush segregation. And I'm like, no, no, no. You need to reach a point where living in a Black neighborhood doesn't mean that you think it's less than.
Mhm.
No one thinks that about living in a white neighborhood. You need to reach a point where if all my neighbors are Black, you don't assume I'm in the ghetto. And to that answer, also, I was not in the ghetto.
Mhm.
I was on the south side of Chicago,
Yeah.
and there was a varied income because
Mhm.
we are, in any way, that helped too. That
Of
I was
course.
around people of all incomes. We
Mhm.
were more sectioned off in my neighborhood, I felt, by race. It's like we're all Black.
Mhm.
But you go a couple blocks over and someone's super duper poor,
Mhm.
and you go another block this way and somebody's got a big house.
Yeah.
They're not rich.
Mhm.
They're making 6 figures.
Mhm.
We're all at the same grocery store,
Mhm.
and we're all going to Harold's together. And I think there's something in that that teaches you unity that I think
Yeah.
is important. You know, if you join the Girl Scouts in my neighborhood, all of those people are in your Girl Scout troop
Mhm.
together.
Yeah. Helpful. Well, I think that that's where at. Thank you for that. I think that's really, you know, it's, so much of what you've said I think is really useful and helpful both for artists and non-artists, and hopefully, if nothing else, this kind of gets people to kind of learn more about your work and follow you on various media platforms as you can continue to do great things. Someone, I should end with this. Someone says, I don't have a question, but I just wanted to say that I love your whole style and vibe, and I appreciate you being here! Exclamation mark.
Thank you. I
You're,
appreciate that.
yeah, you're changing lives. Yeah, and I think representation is really important. Lots of people are now kind of, it's a love fest, and it's beginning in the chat. So I think that that's not a good time to end, but just know that you are appreciated here.
That means a lot. After years of being told you're weird and don't quite fit.
Yeah, absolutely. So, so I would, if we were in person, I would say I'd like to have everybody join me in thanking the amazing Ayana Evans for all of her insight and sharing all of her work, and being so, you know, authentic. I mean, I think, let me echo some of these. I think that that's so rare, particularly in academia, and so it's refreshing, but also really, you know, inspiring. I think for those of us who are aware of that and trying to kind of mimic some of that fearlessness. I think it's really, it's important in that way, besides all of the amazing conceptual stuff that your work is doing, you know? So with that, everybody, we're going to close. Thank you all for coming, and good night.